Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
This morning, as he was leaving the White House for his trip to Argentina for the G20 summit, President Trump was talkative in response to reporters' questions about Michael Cohen's guilty plea today. But every minute the president spent in the air today, the story on the ground was getting worse and worse. And so when he got off the plane tonight in Argentina, here is everything that the president had to say. Less than an hour after Air Force One took off today, the president announced on Twitter that he was canceling his planned one-on-one meeting with Vladimir Putin at the G20 summit. That meeting surely would have provoked questions to both Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin about their involvement in discussions of a Trump Tower deal in Moscow that reportedly would have included a bribe of a $50 million apartment for Vladimir Putin. Joining us now is MSNBC political analyst Ben Rhodes. He served as Deputy National Security Advisor to President Obama, and David Cohen is still with us. Ben, your reaction to the developments today and what it has meant for what was going to be the one-on-one with Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin?
Well, first of all, I think it's very important to note that what we learned today definitively is that Russia knew that Trump had engaged in these actions of trying to get business through Trump Tower in Moscow. So Russia had the goods on Trump. Russia knew something that was blackmailable of Trump. They had leverage on Trump. And so when we look back at how Trump has behaved, genuflecting before Putin in Helsinki, trashing our allies, trashing NATO, we may have a clear explanation of why, which is that Putin knew something about Trump that Trump probably didn't want it in the public space. People have to be wondering, what else does Putin know about Trump that he doesn't want in the public space? And I can guarantee you that all these world leaders at the G20 are wondering the same thing. And so this is really an embarrassment to the United States.
Let's take a look back at the last one-on-one summit between these two and the question that Vladimir Putin answered honestly.
Did you want President Trump to win the election, and did you direct any of your officials to help him do that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Because he talked about bringing the U.S.-Russia relationship back to normal.
Ben Rhodes, it was hard then to imagine it getting worse than that, but questions to Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump about a bribe of a $50 million apartment in Moscow would have been even more interesting to watch.
Well, yeah, and Lawrence, I think the important point here is, first of all, why was Michael Cohen involved in these dealings with the Russian government? If you want to build a building in Russia, you don't necessarily have to go to the Kremlin for that. But, you know, I think even more importantly here is that if you're Vladimir Putin, what would you rather have? A $50 million apartment in a gaudy Trump Tower, or a president of the United States who you have compromising information on? And a president of the United States who's going to upend the international order and diminish the standing of the United States in the world? Vladimir Putin got what he wanted here, and that wasn't an apartment in Trump Tower. It was Donald Trump in the White House.
And David Cohen, clearly Donald Trump would not have been able to figure out any way of dealing with Vladimir Putin publicly this week of all weeks.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can just imagine the questions at the press conference. But, you know, since 2013, Trump has been saying positive things about Putin. When he first announced that he was bringing the Miss Universe contest to Moscow in the summer of 2013, he started tweeting, "Will Vladimir Putin be my best friend? Will he come?" And he started then saying all these flattering things about Putin for all the years leading up until the 2016 campaign. So I think he's always had this idea of doing business with Putin. He's also had a psychological affinity for Putin as some sort of strongman who he wanted to emulate. But I think Ben is exactly right. By dealing with Putin secretly in that point in time, he gave Putin the signal that he was ready to do underhanded business with Putin, and it was also information that Putin could drop publicly if he wanted to. But I don't think he ever needed to blackmail Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump was always in his pocket.
And Ben, this is a moment where the President of the United States would in some form be confronting Vladimir Putin about the aggressive actions he has taken in Ukraine, and we have a President of the United States who can't even speak about it.
Yeah, and first of all, nobody believes he canceled this meeting because of the situation with Ukraine. That took place days ago, and Trump was still planning to meet with him. This meeting was only canceled after the Michael Cohen news came out. And think about the message that sends to the world, Lawrence. It suggests that all President Trump cares about is saving his own hide. And he's even willing to use very serious international crises like the situation between Russia and Ukraine as some type of Twitter cover story for canceling a meeting that is now politically difficult for him to undertake. We've got real problems in the world. We've got a trade war with China. We've got these tensions between Russia and Ukraine. We've got a Saudi crown prince who's at this summit who recently had a journalist murdered in a third country and got a green light for Trump from Trump for those actions. The U.S. president is missing in action and dealing with all these crises because he's dealing with a crisis of his own making in the United States. That's very dangerous and destabilizing, I think, for both the United States and for all those world leaders who are gathered at the G20.
And Ben, Michelle Kaczynski's tweeting about the trip, saying that a source is telling her that Trump headed into the G20 in a terrible mood, spooked and completely distracted. And Ben, they're saying he's canceling other possible one-on-one meetings.
Yeah, and if you think about that, he canceled a meeting with the president of South Korea. Thus far, North Korea has not taken any steps to give up the nuclear weapons, despite all the praise that Donald Trump has heaped on Kim Jong-un, one of his other favorite dictators. We, again, really have a crisis here when the President of the United States cannot even conduct the most routine official business of meeting with fellow world leaders at an international summit because he's too busy tweeting defenses for his own legal problems in the United States and calling the Mueller investigation a witch hunt. This is doing real damage to the office of the presidency. It's doing real damage to American interests around the world. And we're only at the beginning of the story, Lawrence. What happens as this news continues to tighten and as more indictments come and as this gets closer and closer to Trump? I think we do have to be worried about whether he's going to lash out somehow internationally, what he's going to do to try to distract us from the very real problems he faces. And I think that that's clearly on the mind of those world leaders. I went to every G20 summit with President Obama. Every time we landed in that country where the G20 was, we were focused on the business that we had to get done there. We weren't focused on legal trouble that we were perhaps facing back in the United States because it didn't happen under Obama. So I think we're in uncharted territory here, and it's only going to get rougher in terms of those waters in the days and weeks to come.
And so, Lawrence,
go ahead, David. Go ahead.
The key thing here, to pick up on what Ben just said, is that we have a president of the United States who is compromised. Whether it's compromised or not, he is compromised. He's not able to do this job in the public interest because he is compromised, and there's too much going on. He has too much baggage now, secret or otherwise, with Vladimir Putin. He cannot do the job that needs to be done.
It is Friday, the 30th of November of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life, and yes, the French 77s have been readied. Ready to pour, ready to enjoy, virtually of course, and if it's late enough for you in the day, wherever you might be. Or if you're listening to this on podcast and then it's at your leisure, have one. Please do. Have it in real life. Trump is down in Argentina. I don't think he's wearing a bolo tie. He's no gaucho. and but he's tweeting. He's retreating and tweeting, and he's very angry, and as a mob boss would be. And there has been some speculation, and David voiced this during his show. Is he going to try to hightail it out? Will he steal Air Force One? Maybe that's going to be what, the quid pro quo. David was speaking about absconding at the top of his show, and if he took Air Force One, that would be absconding with something. If he flew it to Moscow or somewhere, Leningrad, to St. Petersburg, wherever it is and whatever it is, go to Gorky Park. He can room with Steven Seagal, but I don't think he's going to be happy about that. And I should also mention that I think what really happened is that news got out about Trump offering Vlad a $50 million penthouse in the Moscow Trump Tower as a little sweetener. Hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Now the news got out that Trump offered Vlad a $50 million penthouse. The only thing is that he told Vlad it was a $200 million penthouse. So I think that Vlad was a little upset about that because you don't lie about a free penthouse. You don't say it's 50 mil, or you don't say it's 200 mil when it's really 50 mil. What did Bob Dylan say? If you're going to live outside the law, you gotta be honest. Otherwise, you're just a crook. All right. Well, there's so much going on. These Cohen confessions, this latest Cohen confession, pushed dear old Trump over the top, and that was David Corn, and on Lawrence's show, basically synthesizing it down to its base element, and that is Trump is compromised by the Russians. Not compromised necessarily, it could be, but he's compromised by the Russians. So that makes me wonder as well. Will Trump come back? It used to be where tin pot dictators, they would just go to Paris. They would live in exile in Paris. I mean, the Ayatollah lived in Paris. Yeah. Idi Amin lived in Paris. But Trump hates Paris, so he's not going to go there. And I got to tell you, no one's going to let him live there. Can't go to Spain. Go to Spain, he might end up in The Hague. Actually, that may be his European residence. Sort of European in a way, isn't it? Of course it is. He can live there. Everybody thinks The Hague is like this dungeon. No, it's actually well appointed. The cubicles are very comfortable. Jeez, everybody makes it out like it's some sort of dungeon. It's not. Jeez. Okay, what's on the rest of the menu here? In the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Well, this is getting weird now because another Ferguson protester has mysteriously died. There's this is 3 that they're citing, but in the weeks right after, there were 2 that I know about, and that seemed very odd. And then there was another one I don't know. So right now I'm up to 6. Very mysterious. 4 St. Louis cops are facing multiple federal felonies for beating an undercover cop they mistook for a protester at a Black Lives Matter rally. And then they conspired to cover it up. Mm-hmm. And a 9-year-old's letter to Steph Curry changed how a massive corporation markets to girls. And it's about time. After the break, we move to the chef's table where GOP leaders are very upset that their racist politicians are being called racist. They don't want to stop the racism, just stop calling them racist, and then the problem will go away. Not the problem of racism, because they don't see that as a problem. And all 2 million federal workers received a memo warning that they cannot use the word resist or discuss Trump's impeachment at work. Okay. Yeah, Fuhrer is getting furious, don't you think? All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice to the rightish of the page the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. And a fine, admirable job she does, though busy she be. Do check out her shows on Saturday. At the Table with Kelly Lincoln begins at 3 p.m. on the West Coast. Of course, that is 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And later on, a few hours later, she teams up with Ricky May for the Roundtable Roundhouse Power Hour beginning at 9 p.m. on the West Coast, midnight on the Eastern Seashore and time zone. If you would then please take a look to the leftish of the page at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the Contribute button. And all kidding aside, if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, that would be so helpful to us. A small recurring donation. I know I'm a broken record on this. I apologize. I hate doing this. But I have to, because bills have to be paid, and we're unable to do this without you. And you have been helping, so thank you very much. And we're in a fund drive. I'll just leave it at that. We are not going to interrupt regular programming. Okay, that's the part that I always hated the most. And I'm looking at you. What is it? Pacifica? I think they were called Pacifica. It's been so long since I could really, darn them. But regardless, bills have to be paid, and the bills are going up. So thank you for your generosity. And as I said, we are truly unable to do this without you. Please do follow the show on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that platform. Thank you very much, Tom. And we're over on Facebook. Oh, God. Those Facebook people, they're just, I don't know. Maybe their motto was, do evil. That must be. Anyway, we're there, and Kelly has jumped into the fore, and she takes care of the Facebook Live platform on that platform. Thank you, Kelly. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes or so before showtime. And that is, I will remind folks, an integral part to this whole multimedia operation. Otherwise, it wouldn't be multimedia. Okay. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. We're on Facebook, so what? And you can also pick up podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy by way of Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. Ophelia Garcia Lawler of The Cut brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. This is very mysterious. A lot of these Ferguson protesters are ending up dead, at least the ones who were, especially the ones who were in the limelight, shall we say. Very mysterious. It may just be a coincidence, I don't know. But it's another one of these what I call convenient deaths. They look like it might be natural. It looks like it might be a simple mugging. Looks very convenient. Bassem Masri, 31, a Palestinian-American activist who live-streamed throughout the protest against police brutality and the murder of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, has died. Reports of his death circulated on social media on Tuesday, with other prominent activists and journalists offering condolences and memories about the man who was known for his strong, outspoken beliefs and his thoughtful conversation. I held off, even mentioning this on the show or anywhere in a public forum, and I didn't really tweet out about it in the beginning either, because I was trying to find a corroboration that he actually died. I didn't know it was a hoax. But when the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, reported, well, I took that as more corroboration than I would have been able to acquire anyway. Now, Masri was found unresponsive on a bus in Bridgeton, Missouri. He was declared dead at a hospital at 11:09 a.m. after someone on the bus attempted CPR. A man named Fazian Syed. Now, this is who I saw on Facebook, and it came by way. I'm sorry, not Facebook. I saw this on Twitter, and it had come by way of Facebook. He had posted, a gentleman who was fierce when he faced injustice. In his short life, he did as much, if not more, to unite the fight for black liberation and Palestinian liberation. We ask everyone to pray and make dua for Bassem and his family. May Allah accept his sacrifices for justice and overlook his flaws and mistakes. Now, that is, of course, a prayer of condolence, by the way. Now, as I mentioned, Masri is not the first person connected to the Ferguson protests to die in the years since the protests against the killing of Michael Brown. Dane Jones and Darren Seals have both been found dead since 2014. Now, Jones' death was considered by police to be a suicide, but his mother, Melissa McKinney, who was a prominent activist herself, has suspected foul play all along. Now, Seals was shot to death and set on fire, and his murder just conveniently has not been solved. Convenient. Wizentowski of the Riverfront Times brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe, a West Coast cookbook and speakeasy. 4 St. Louis city officers are facing multiple federal felonies for beating an undercover cop whom they mistook for a protester and then conspiring to cover it up. The officers, Dustin Boone, Bailey Coletta, Randy Hayes, and Christopher Myers, were named in a federal indictment unsealed yesterday. Their actions, which took place on September 17th of 2017, are being revealed 2 months after 12 plaintiffs filed lawsuits over mass arrests that took place 3 days after a jury acquitted ex-St. Louis cop Jason Stockley on charges of murder. According to the indictment, the 4 cops were detailed to police protests. Instead, they then targeted one of their own, an undercover 22-year veteran identified as LH, who himself was mixed in with the crowd. Now, my experience is that those guys tend to, and gals, by the way, tend to, in my experience, and I can't say I've known and have recognized every cop in a crowd, but they tend to be agent provocateurs, in my experience. But in this situation, I think that LH might have been of a particular hue. And maybe it was dark and maybe it wasn't. But I don't know. I think maybe the way that light refracted through our atmosphere and then lit upon his visage, I think the pigment might have had just the way that light just then reflected off of LH. Well, they threw LH to the ground, kicked and struck him while he was compliant, not posing any physical threat to anyone, the federal complaint alleges. The indictment also notes that the officers beat their victim with weapons, specifically their armored boots and riot batons. Remarkably, the indictment includes transcripts of the officers' text messages sent 2 days prior to the September 17th demonstration. These text messages, the indictment states, showed disdain for the Stockley protesters and excitement about using unjustified force against them and going undetected while doing so. They were bragging about how they were, quote, gonna whoop some ass. And that it was going to feel like so much fun to be able to do this undetected, get away with it, and actually beat some people who deserve it. And the people who deserve it are anybody who says that a cop might be guilty of a crime. In a statement, St. Louis Metropolitan Police Chief John Hayden said he is deeply disappointed in the alleged actions of these individual officers, adding, however, it is in no way reflective of the hard work and dedication exhibited by the men and women of our department to serve the community on a daily basis with integrity and honor. Yeah, boilerplate. It's just a few bad apples. Yeah, well, you know what? A bad apple can rot the whole barrel. And have they been doing it for a while? How long has the barrel been rotting? So what a difference an indictment makes. On the morning of September 18th, 2017, hours after the officers charged today beat and arrested one of their own, Acting Police Chief Lawrence O'Toole boasted proudly about his officers' actions, which resulted in the arrest of more than 80, including an Air Force officer and a Post-Dispatch reporter. I'm proud to say the city of St. Louis and the police own the night, O'Toole said at the time. Our officers are doing an outstanding job. Progress brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Like so many other kids, 9-year-old Riley felt the best way to get ready for her upcoming basketball season was to buy her favorite player's basketball shoes. In this case, Steph Curry's Curry 5s. But when she visited the Under Armour website, Curry 5s were nowhere to be found under the girls section of the website. So Riley decided to do something about it. On November 18th, Riley's father, Chris Morrison, shared a letter on Instagram that Riley wrote to Curry. In her letter, Riley says that she is a big fan of Curry's and goes to Golden State Warrior games with her father. She says she was disappointed with the Curry 5s were only for sale under the boys section, and that those shoes were even available for customization. I know you support girl athletes because you have 2 daughters, and you host an all-girls basketball camp, she wrote. I hope you can work with Under Armour to change this, because girls want to rock the Curry 5s too. On November 26th, Liz Plank of Vox shared the letter on her social media, and Teen Vogue picked up the story 2 days later. The letter's virality helped get Curry's attention, and by November 29th, he had fixed the problem. In his response, the 2-time NBA MVP and 3-time NBA champion says that he spent 2 days talking to Under Armour about how to solve the problem. Unfortunately, the company had only advertised its smaller sizes for boys, even though they can just as easily be worn by girls. By November 29th, when Curry sent out his response, the issue had already been solved. When you go to the Under Armour website now, the girls section of basketball athletic shoes proudly displays the Curry 5s. Now, Curry wasn't done, though. He said he'd personally send Riley her own pair of Curry 5s and said she'd be the first to receive the Curry 6 when they come out. Plus, he told the young Warriors fan to be in town on International Women's Day, which is on March 8th. She's going to go to the game then. It's certainly wonderful to have Curry take this problem so seriously and to fix it so quickly and thoroughly. And Riley's letter is a testament to the power of speaking up and holding your idols accountable. However, the fact that this was a problem in the first place shows how even well-intentioned stars and major corporations have overlooked female consumers and fans in their marketing and distribution strategies. Girls and women buy shoes too. It shouldn't take a letter from a precocious 9-year-old to point that out. Indeed. All right, let's get to our break, and when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. You've probably seen those little cards in hotel rooms. Towel on the floor if you want a fresh one. Towel on the rack if you'll use it again. And using towels more than once means less laundry, which saves water and energy. But you don't pay the utility bills at the hotel, so do you really care? Well, a new study in the journal Nature Energy suggests hotel guests really are motivated to conserve for factors other than money.
The study actually shows that even if people have zero financial benefits, they still respond to this kind of feedback for environmental reasons.
Verena Tiefenbeck studies information systems research and behavioral economics at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. Her team studied the lodger energy use issue by installing smart shower meters in 6 Swiss hotels, 265 rooms in all. The meters displayed an ongoing tally of water and energy use as guests were washing up. 20,000 showers later, the scientists found that their simple intervention encouraged guests to use 11% less energy per shower. That's compared to guests in a control group who simply saw the water temperature displayed on the meter. This finding probably won't revolutionize the bottom line for hotels, though. Each smart meter would save a hotel only about $20 a year. But in homes, where most people take most of their showers, the savings actually could add up for the individual. And devices like these could help consumers focus their efforts where they matter most.
Most people think that they should switch off the lights, which isn't the most effective thing to do, and they don't know that the actual big end users would be space heating and water heating.
So now you know. Even without a smart device, if you want to cut your energy bill, try lathering up just a little bit faster. Of course, if you're staying at the Bates Motel, maybe skip the shower altogether. Thanks for listening.
For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Someone needs to buy a Grassroots USA tour package for the members of Donald Trump's Council of Economic Advisors, so they can at least visit the real world one time in their lives. The 3 advisors are ivory tower ideologues whose sole professional expertise seems to be twisting reality to fit their boss's right-wing fantasia. In July, for example, the trio issued a fairy tale disguised as an official government report on poverty, essentially asserting that our U.S. of A. no longer has a poverty problem. Poof, declared these learned ones from on high. The need for food stamps, Medicaid, public housing, and other assistance has virtually disappeared in our land. Jobs abound, they lectured. The economy is pumping out great gobs of new wealth, and bluebirds of happiness are spreading joy everywhere. You can imagine the comfort that this report has brought to the 45 million Americans now living below the poverty line. That line means they're trying to make ends meet on only $25,000 a year. Not per person, but for a family of 4. Let's see any of Trump's advisors try to live on that before smugly claiming that poverty is largely over. What's at work here is the political manipulation of statistics to support Trump's ideological delusion that poor people are losers who are addicted to safety net programs. As the narcissistic son of privilege, he is out to cut those programs and to impose strict work requirements on families seeking public assistance. Never mind that most recipients of aid already work, subjected to the hardships of poverty by the low wages of their jobs. This is Jim Hightower saying, but that's the real world. And it doesn't mesh with Trump and company's cruel self-deception that basic humane benefits make poverty too pleasant. They're imposing a Dickensian governing ethic that is fundamentally obscene. And even more obscene, it's un-American.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
A surprise appearance by Donald Trump's one-time lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen in court Thursday morning to plead guilty to lying to Congress seems to have taken the Mueller probe to a new level. Cohen had originally said talks between himself and Trump about a proposed Trump Tower project in Moscow ended in January 2016, right before the start of primary season. Cohen now admits that was a lie, and one he told out of a sense of obligation to Trump. The revelations are significant because they appear to show Trump was engaged in business dealings with Russia in the midst of a campaign in which Moscow interfered to help elect him. Trump responded by attacking Michael Cohen as he was departing the White House Thursday, headed to Argentina for the G20 summit.
And he's a weak person, and by being weak, unlike other people that you watch, he's a weak person, and what he's trying to do is get a reduced sentence. So he's lying about a project that everybody knew about. I mean, we were very open with it. We were thinking about building a building. I guess we had in a form, it was an option. I don't know what you'd call it. I decided ultimately not to do it. There would have been nothing wrong if I did do it. If I did do it, there would have been nothing wrong. That was my business. So he's lying very simply to get a reduced sentence, okay?
But an hour after leaving on Air Force One, Trump tweeted out a message saying that he had canceled his planned meeting with Vladimir Putin. CNN's Jeff Zeleny is with the president in Argentina.
President Trump is suddenly keeping his distance from Russian President Vladimir Putin, abruptly canceling their one-on-one meeting at the G20 summit. An hour after saying this today while leaving the White House,
I think it's a very good time to have the meeting.
The president changing course while flying here to Argentina, saying on Twitter it would be the best for all parties concerned to cancel. He blamed it on Russia's refusal to release Ukrainian Navy ships and sailors seized in a confrontation last weekend. But he's been nearly silent on that matter for days. The only thing that changed is today's bombshell in the Russia investigation. His former fixer, Michael Cohen, pleading guilty to new charges. saying he lied about how much the president knew during the 2016 campaign about trying to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. The president said his longtime lawyer was lying.
BuzzFeed capped off the day with another bombshell, reporting that the Trump administration considered giving Russian President Vladimir Putin a $50 million penthouse in their proposed Trump Tower, Moscow, to entice Russian oligarchs to buy apartments. BuzzFeed's Jason Leopold broke the story.
The plan was discussed prior to January 2016 when Michael Cohen said that all of the negotiations related to Trump Tower Moscow ended. Felix Sater is the one who said he came up with the idea for giving Vladimir Putin or handing that penthouse to Vladimir Putin as a way to entice oligarchs into purchasing the rest of the apartments in Trump Tower Moscow, in which Trump Organization and Michael Cohen and Felix Sater could earn quite a bit of money. It apparently obviously didn't get very far because the entire project fizzled, but Michael Cohen did discuss this with a representative of Vladimir Putin's press secretary. And as we saw in the complaint against Michael Cohen, what we saw was that there were phone calls that Michael Cohen had with Dmitry Peskov, with representatives for Dmitry Peskov, in which he said previously that those communications never took place. He sent an email, and that was the last of it. But we now know that those conversations were quite extensive.
So you got the president's basically his number two, his deputy, Michael Cohen, talking to the office of Putin's number two, whether that's Peskov himself or his assistant. Okay. Your reporting suggests that the plan to give Putin the $50 million penthouse, that was actually discussed by Cohen when he was talking to Peskov's office?
Yes, in fact, it was. We have confirmation from that from at least 4 sources.
Neil Katyal, former Solicitor General under Obama, said Thursday's events could mark the beginning of the end of Trump's presidency.
The facts aren't all in, but I think we very well could look back on this day, November 29th, 2018, as the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency. And I say that for 3 reasons. One, what we've been talking about, the criminal stuff that Mueller has on Trump. But there are 2 other important things going on. One is the House investigation. Now the House is controlled by Democrats. They'll take power in January. They'll be able to investigate all of these lies to Congress. And the second is, even if the Democrats don't want to do it, impeachment. They almost are going to have to look at it very, very seriously now, because this isn't just criminal. This is the president campaigning in 2016 and hiding all of his negotiations with Russia, with the Kremlin itself and the number 2 person at the Kremlin. So that, that's bad, and the American people obviously should have had a right to know that at the time. But also just think about the last 2 years have been a period of intense compromise. The Russians have known that Trump lied to the American people for 2 years, and imagine all the things, subtle things they could have done to get their bidding done over the last 2 years.
In other news, the new North American trade deal, the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, was signed by the leaders of the 3 countries on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Buenos Aires. The USMCA replaces NAFTA and establishes new rules for the auto industry and digital trade, but faces an uphill fight in Congress. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. A day after senators advanced a bill to end U.S. support for the Saudi-led war in Yemen, let's step back and consider the scope of U.S. involvement in the Arab world's most devastating proxy battle.
The U.S. role in Yemen has not been direct combat. It's been an enabling role.
Jeffrey Martini is a senior Middle East researcher at the RAND Corporation.
The different functions that have been provided were a cell that helped do targeting for the Saudi air campaign, aerial refueling, although that was suspended recently, intelligence sharing, and then air combat search and rescue.
By avoiding direct strikes on Iranian-backed Houthi militants, the U.S. hopes to remain at arm's length from the Yemen war. That's been tough to do as American-made weapons strike civilian targets, claiming thousands of lives since 2014. If the U.S. wants to stop the carnage in Yemen, holding up the sale of those weapons could do a lot more than stopping intelligence sharing or in-air refueling.
Under the Obama administration, there was a period when precision-guided munitions were not being delivered, and that, frankly, is more impactful than some of the niche enablers.
Even if stopping arms sales to the Saudis is a third rail for senators, withdrawing day-to-day U.S. cooperation in the war could have an impact. Scott R. Anderson is a fellow at the Brookings Institute and a former legal advisor for Mideast policy at the State Department.
I think the United States, if it were to reverse position on this, would kind of open the route for a lot of other governments to take a similar position who may otherwise be hesitant to do that for fear of damaging their relationship with Saudi Arabia. In other words, the United States removing support would give them a lot of political cover to do the same.
Stay tuned for the next move. The Senate could vote on whether to formally cut off U.S. support for the Yemen war as early as next week. Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The French 77s have been poured for your imbibing pleasure, so please do imbibe pleasurably. All right, we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 39 degrees Fahrenheit. We're expected to be a tad cooler than yesterday, looking to have a high topping out about 48 degrees, an overnight low around 38. Winds right now are out of the southwest, light and variable in cloudy conditions. In a few hours, they will then shift out of this. Oh no, they will remain out of the southwest, but will be picking up in speed at 5 to 10 miles per hour. We are experiencing rain at the moment, and rain will continue. Light and variable winds will continue tonight and then pick up tomorrow, but out of the west-southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Looking at, about a half an inch of rain today and tonight, and then about a quarter of an inch tomorrow. We are in a winter storm warning. Heavy wet snow conditions, about 2,500 feet. So I better get a hold of my son and tell him, hey, you better be careful. Maybe come a bit earlier, because that's going to be happening, just around the time that he wants to travel and be right in that pass. I better get a hold of him right now. All right. So, pollen is none. We don't have any pollen, they say. The air quality index has inched down a little bit lower in the good range at 26 parts per million, and the wintertime daytime UV index is rated low at 1. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.91 inches. Visibility is down to 6 miles, and relative humidity is at 86%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by People's Personal Weather Stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 51 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 52 and partly cloudy. Rome is 56 and mostly cloudy with a wind advisory. Hold on to your fedoras there. Yeah, they wear fedoras. Kiev is 20 and fair. That's 20 degrees Fahrenheit, by the way. Freezing, and they call it fair. Kabul is 44 with haze. That's actually smoke mixed in with a little bit of water vapor. Hong Kong is 68 and fair. Tokyo is 51 degrees and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 66 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and partly cloudy with a small craft advisory on the bay. Be careful. And New York, New York is 41 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Israel of Think Progress brings us this first offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. 2 years after Donald Trump won the presidency, did he win it? Using openly racist rhetoric, much of the Republican Party's 2018 midterm strategy centered around appeals to voters' bigotry. One Republican incumbent smeared his Christian opponent, a Latino Arab American, accusing him of secretly being a radical Muslim and a security risk. The New Jersey State Republican Party sent a racist mailer to voters in the district using images of a fish market juxtaposed next to Democratic Representative-elect Andy Kim's name, written in a font similar to Chinese takeout restaurants. The Florida gubernatorial nominee slurred his Democratic opponent, who was black, comparing him to a monkey. And a sitting U.S. senator urged voter suppression and joked about public hangings as she prepared for her race against a Democratic opponent who is black, rather than call out racists. And racists in their party, however, the leadership of the RNC has instead trained their ire on anyone who does. RNC National Chair has done this on at least 3 occasions in the past 2 weeks. Ronna McDaniel, why is that name familiar? Oh, she dropped the Romney part because, well, it made Donnie upset. Well, she's done that at least on 3 occasions. She took to Twitter to attack NBC News, former President Barack Obama, and the newly elected House Democratic Caucus Chair Representative Hakeem Jeffries of New York for having had the nerve to call out racism by Trump and other Republicans. As the Washington Post's Dave Weigel noted, Jeffries' comments were said in reaction to Donald Trump's response to white nationalist attacks in Charlottesville, Virginia. And the president had opined that there were very fine people on both sides. I'm sorry, I might have scrolled down a little bit too far here. Let me see if there's something. Oh, yeah, okay, I got you. So, on one of her top lieutenants, RNC spokesman and Rapid Response Director Michael Ahrens has made similar attacks this month. And his has been fairly vile, and if you go to his tweets, you'll see how vile they are. The Republican Party's current official platform claims, "We denounce bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, ethnic prejudice, and religious intolerance." That's what the platform says. But then they wink and go, "Any lone wolves out there want to carry out our agenda? Please? You could, you know." But even now, its own few members of color are not so sure. Former Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Steele, the only African-American to have ever held the position, lamented earlier this month that Republicans feel they can peddle, or at least stay silent on inherent racism, misogynistic language, and bad behavior. Now he says it. After losing re-election in her heavily Republican congressional district in Utah, Representative Mia Love, the only black Republican woman ever elected to Congress, from Utah, made it clear, for the Republican Party, her party's racism was a big part of the problem. The election experience in these comments shines a spotlight on the problems Washington politicians have with minorities and black Americans. I have to jump in here and say, it's not new. I mean, they didn't call it the Southern Strategy all the way back to Nixon. Yeah, even before Ronnie at Philadelphia, Mississippi. Atwater was working his magic, along with Roger Stone, as rat-fuckers for Richard Nixon. And rat-fucking meant, yeah, a lot of racism, anti-Semitism, misogyny, and, just regular abuse of power.
Je te donne seulement l'amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Martin Sismar of Raw Story brings us this final offering here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy's Chef's Table, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. All federal workers have received a memo warning that they cannot discuss the possibility of Donald Trump being impeached at work, the New York Times reports. The memo went out on Wednesday to about 2 million workers. The memo said it was illegal for them to participate in such discussions at work. This is the first time such a memo has been sent out, the New York Times reports, and critics say it is overreaching. Advocating for a candidate to be impeached and thus potentially disqualified from holding federal office is clearly directed at the failure of that candidate's campaign for federal office, the memo said. Because Trump is already running for re-election in 2020, the letter contends that arguments about his policies or impeachment prospects are, quote, effectively statements in support or opposition to his campaign, end quote. The memo also tells workers they cannot use the word resist. We understood that the resistance and the hashtag resist originally gained prominence shortly after Trump's election in 2016 and generally related to efforts to oppose administration policies, the letter said. However, resistance, hashtag resistance, similar terms have been inextricably linked with the electoral success or failure of the president. A law professor at Washington U in St. Louis criticized the memo. This goes beyond past guidance about what partisan political activity is and is more restrictive of speech of federal employees than past guidance that I've been able to find, she said. I think their legal analysis is wrong, and this attempt to outlaw all discussion of impeachment of Trump in the federal workplace might even be illegal. Well, don't let that stop them. Something as small as that? Hey, the Constitution's just a goddamn piece of paper anyway, isn't it? According to them. Okay, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and also the week. Networks Radio broadcasts on, of course. We'll meet up with you on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. Stay tuned to Networks Radio all day, all night, all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up with you on Monday right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Cohen. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver.